Assalamu alaikum, everyone. You know, when we think of the Hajj, one of the most powerful images that comes to mind is the act of sacrifice. It's such a visible, central rite. But what's really going on there? What does it all mean, beyond just the physical act? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dive into today. We're going to look at the Quran to really get to the spiritual heart of this ancient practice. And what we'll find is a beautiful, timeless message about humility, gratitude, and what it means to be a community.
So what is the true meaning of sacrifice? It's so easy to just focus on the physical side of it, right? The outward ritual. But what we're about to discover as we look at Surah Al-Hajj is that the Quran points us to something much, much deeper. It teaches us that the most important offering, the one that truly counts, is actually something you can't even see.
All right, so let's jump right in. Our journey begins with verse 34 of Surah Al-Hajj, and right away, this verse just completely broadens our perspective. It shows us that this whole idea of a ritual sacrifice, well, it isn't unique to just one group of people. Nope, it's actually a shared tradition that goes way back across human history, and it has a very specific, universal purpose.
And what's so powerful about this is the idea of universality. The verse literally says that these ceremonies were given to every nation. And why? So they could mention God's name over the things He provided for them, like their livestock. Think about that for a second. It's this incredible call for all of humanity to come together under one God, to recognize that He is the single source of every single blessing we have.
Okay, but the verse doesn't just stop there with the action itself. It takes a really interesting turn. It pivots and promises good tidings, or good news. But here's the catch. It's not just for anyone who performs the ritual. Nope, it's for a very specific type of person. And this, right here, is where we start to move away from the outer act and look at the inner character of the person doing the worshiping.
So who are these people? Who gets this amazing good news? Well, they're described as the humble. And the very next verse, verse 35, breaks down exactly what that means.
The specific Arabic word used here is mukhbitin. And this word is so much more than just being quiet or modest on the outside. It's talking about a deep, sincere, truly heartfelt devotion. It's the total opposite of someone who's just, going through the motions of worship, Someone who's doing the actions without any real inner connection.
So what does this sincere humility actually look like in practice? The verse gives us 4 really clear traits. First, there's this powerful emotional and spiritual reaction. Their hearts literally tremble when Allah is mentioned. Second, resilience. They're patient when they face trials and hardships. Third, discipline. They consistently establish their prayers. And finally, generosity. They spend and share freely from whatever God has given them. I mean, what a beautiful picture of the ideal believer, right?
Okay, so now that we have this picture of the inner state that Allah praises, let's see how the Quran ties this all back to the physical ritual of sacrifice. And it does this by introducing this amazing concept of symbols as a way to teach us about gratitude.
Verse 36 brings in another really important term, sha'air. This means the sacred symbols of Allah. And in this context, the animals that are set for sacrifice, the camels, the cattle, they're elevated. They're not just seen as animals anymore. They become these powerful, visible symbols of God's blessings, and they're meant to make us feel a sense of awe and just deep gratitude.
And the ritual itself, it's designed like this perfect cycle of gratitude. Think about it. First, you acknowledge where the blessing comes from by mentioning God's name. Second, you get to enjoy that blessing yourself by eating from it. And third, you complete the whole circle by sharing that blessing with the community, especially with the poor and the needy. It's just this beautiful, seamless flow from personal gratitude straight into social responsibility.
Which brings us to the big question. This is really the heart of our whole explainer today. We've talked about the physical ritual. It involves meat, it involves blood. But spiritually speaking, what is the actual offering? What is it that's really reaching God in all of this?
Well, the answer we get in verse 37 is honestly one of the most profound statements about worship in the entire Quran. It makes it crystal clear what the true offering really is.
And the verse could not be more explicit about this. It states point blank that the meat of the animal and the blood of the animal, they do not reach Allah. The physical stuff isn't the offering. So what does reach Him? Something else entirely. It's the piety, the taqwa, from you. The entire physical ritual is just a vehicle to help you cultivate an internal, spiritual state. And that spiritual state is called taqwa. Now, you might have heard this translated as piety or fear of God, but a much richer way to think about it is God consciousness.
It's this inner state of being aware of God, being mindful of Him, and having a sincere devotion. That is the essence of the sacrifice. That's the real offering that gives the whole ritual its meaning and its value.
So let's put it all together. The whole reason these animals are made available to us is so that we have a way to magnify God, to show how grateful we are for His guidance in our lives. You can think of it like this. The outer act is the language we use, but the inner taqwa, that's the actual meaning behind the words.
But believe it or not, the message gets even bigger. The Quran doesn't just stop at personal piety. It takes this inner quality and connects it directly to the strength and even the defense of the whole community.
Verse 38 makes this incredible promise. It says, "Indeed, Allah defends those who have believed." And that statement, it's a direct link, right? It connects sincere faith, that taqwa we've been talking about, directly to getting divine protection and support.
Now, to really understand the weight of this, you have to know the historical context. This is so key. These verses were revealed at a time when the early Muslims were facing just terrible persecution in Mecca. And this verse in particular is actually seen as the very first time permission was given to fight in self-defense. So when the Quran is emphasizing taqwa right here, it's not just about personal worship in a vacuum. It was a call for the kind of inner strength and moral grit that an entire community desperately needed to survive and protect itself. And this right here is the final powerful lesson. The Quran is showing us that personal inner piety, it's not something you just do on your own. It is the very foundation of a strong, resilient, and divinely protected community. The two things can't be separated. They're completely intertwined.
So, wow. In just a handful of verses, we've unpacked 3 huge layers of meaning. We started with the idea of sacrifice as a universal way to show gratitude. Then we went deeper and discovered that its real value is the taqwa, the piety inside of us. And finally, we saw how that individual piety is the bedrock that makes a community strong and resilient.
And that leaves us with a really important question to think about, doesn't it? You know, in our world today, which is so focused on public image and big, grand gestures, what does that true, humble devotion actually look like? What does the sincere, heartfelt taqwa these verses are talking about, what does that look like in our everyday lives? Something to really reflect on.